been searching for the best way to generate passive income in your life and heard that real estate is a great way to do it. But you're tired of all the so-called gurus who are all talk and no substance. Get ready to celebrate because Kevin Buck has spent 14 years successfully making it happen. This is the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast. Now, here's Kevin Buck.
Hey guys, Kevin Buck here, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast. Our mission is to help you build and maintain massive amounts of cash flow through income-producing real estate investments. Our guest for this week's show is public adjuster and partner at Strategic Claims Consultants, Kyle Herring. Now, Kyle has nearly 2 decades of experience as a public adjuster and has worked on major disasters across the country. And, guys, this is one of those topics that a lot of investors don't really think about until disaster actually strikes, right? Something catastrophic happens. And I think that we can all agree that, owning investment property, it's a great thing when things are going well, but what happens if this precious investment property of yours sustains a major damage or even a complete loss, right? And so in today's show, Kyle and I are going to discuss how to successfully navigate the claims process should you encounter an unfortunate loss in your investment property. So guys, I'm excited to have Kyle here as a guest in the show, but before we bring him on, I just have a few quick housekeeping items I'd like to run through. First and foremost, you've heard me mention it now multiple times over the last couple of shows. Our third mobile home park investment fund recently went live. And so if you want to learn more about partnering with my team and I on mobile home park opportunities, you can go on over to investwithsunrise.com. Again, that's investwithsunrise.com. And there on that site, you can access our most recent webinar, as well as our PPM and offering documents. I definitely suggest you take a moment to come on over and learn why we feel mobile home parks are one of the best investments and one of the most tax efficient investment vehicles available. And it's not just that. We're not the only ones saying that. As you'll probably notice if you're already in the space, or you'll come to find, is that there's a lot of the big private equity groups that are now really fighting to allocate billions of dollars to this investment vehicle. And so mobile home parks were kind of under the radar a decade ago, and now everyone knows about them. They're a wonderful investment. And so again, go to investwithsunrise.com if you'd like to learn more about partnering with me and my team on deals together. Moving on here, guys, if you love what we're doing here at the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast, please take a moment and subscribe to the show. That way you get notified when new episodes come live, as well as leave a rating and review if you haven't done so already, over on Stitcher or iTunes, wherever you might be using for your listening platform. It's how we attract awesome guests such as Kyle here to the show today. And then lastly, before we get on with it, I want to remind you of the free 30-minute phone call I offer each and every Friday. This is where I set aside a couple of different 30-minute time slots to connect with you on the telephone. Okay, I've been doing this now for over 6 years, and I've talked to hundreds of you. And really, there's no ulterior motive here. I just love, speaking with others that share a similar passion for real estate investing. So whether you're brand new to the business or a seasoned pro, it doesn't really make a difference. I love the opportunity to speak with you and meet you, and just really share some stories together. So go to kevinbuck.com to schedule that call with me. And now, guys, without further ado, I'd like to welcome our guest here for today's show, Kyle Herring. So, Kyle, how you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you, Kevin? Thanks for having me on.
Doing great, man. Excited to have you here. Excited to talk about the exciting topic of insurance claims, right?
I wouldn't go as far
it's
as
exciting.
But
It's one of those things that we hope never, ever we have to deal with. But inevitably, if you I feel that if you own investment in real estate, if you own a couple properties, maybe a few or maybe a lot, whatever, and you own them for multiple decades, inevitably at some point in time, something's going to probably happen. Odds are something will happen where you'll have to make an insurance claim. And so we're going to talk about, navigating that process here today, and how to do it right and how to avoid a lot of the mistakes that the uneducated folks or the uninformed folks, this is probably a better way to put it, might make as they go through this process. So I guess first and foremost, Kyle, maybe take a moment and just tell us a little bit more about you and your firm and exactly what it is you guys do.
Sure. So I started as an independent insurance adjuster. I represented insurance companies, started my career back in 2002. Spent around close to a decade there representing various insurance companies from Florida, Massachusetts, over into Texas. Had an opportunity to ultimately jumped the fence, and as they would say, as I was an independent adjuster, going to the dark side as far as the public adjuster route and representing the policyholder and representing the consumer. And I made that jump back in 2010. And I partnered up with my partner there in Texas back in 2015, and now recently merged our company here with Strategic Claims here the past year or so.
Okay. Sounds great. And the dark side, tell me about that. Why is it considered the dark side when you jump over to the public side?
There's definitely there's definitely thoughts as far as the adjuster side, where not all public adjusters come off as reasonable, or they may come off as a little aggressive, and so there's definitely some public adjusters out there that try to throw whatever they can at the wall, see what sticks, and so. Not many have a great reputation, and so they like to paint everyone with a broad brush there.
Got it. So for those that might not know, let's just assume that there might be a few listening that they don't even know what a public adjuster is. Maybe take a moment and give us that definition and exactly what a public adjuster is and when their services are needed or warranted, I guess.
So every state, with the exception of a few here in the United States, each insurance department for each state has enacted licensing that licenses public adjusters. And what we do is we actually represent and advocate the best interests of our client, which is the consumer and the policyholder. And so with that, again, each state has different laws and regulations as it relates to compensation, traditionally tied to some type of contingency fee agreement as far as the overall recovery. Some states like Louisiana, we have some folks from our group there working. Hurricane Laura, states like that, they require hourly charges, not necessarily on a contingency. So each state's a little bit different from that standpoint. But in the broad scheme, we're here to represent and advocate the best interests of the client, and that's the insured and the policyholder.
Okay. Would you say that the average client might not know that that's an option? I mean, to actually call in a public adjuster. I mean, your insurance company, they have their own adjusters, right? That work for the insurance company. That's normally they'll be the ones that you call the insurance company, let them know that you've had damage, you've had a loss, what have you. They're going to probably immediately enact their claims adjustment department and get an adjuster to make contact with you, right? And so some folks might not even realize that they have the option to actually choose an outside public adjuster, correct?
That's right. No, definitely not as commonly known as we would hope. A lot of our practice is definitely just reaching out and engaging to potential clients. We have guys that are, pre-market to, just listeners like you have here on the show, real estate investors, multifamily apartment complexes, property managers. So, our motto is definitely get to know us before you need us, and not, be reactive whenever something does happen, having us and having these discussions beforehand so you know what to expect, how to handle it, and things like that. Knowing that we're out here is definitely, it's very important.
Okay, good deal. You had mentioned about the compensation. It varies from state to state, but I think you had mentioned that the norm, as far as how you might get paid being a public adjuster, is on a contingency basis. So just give a little bit more of an explanation of how that might work. Use maybe a hypothetical example of some recent, maybe the hurricane damage up in Louisiana. Maybe use an example that you can share with the audience.
So for the states that we practice in day to day outside of any catastrophes, Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, Texas, Florida, we work off of a 10% contingency. So whatever the proceeds of the insurance claim are, our fees are 10% of that.
Okay. Would you say on average, and I don't know if you're how you're appropriately should answer this, but on average, you can typically get a client more money back on that claim than might be given by their own insurance adjuster, that works for the insurance company?
100% of the time. So as the cliche goes, you're not going to send your 1099 and your K-2s to the IRS and ask them how much you owe them in taxes. Just like an insurance claim, you want to tell the insurance company what your claim is and what the benefits you're entitled to are. And so by hiring a public adjuster, you're telling, not asking.
So I'm assuming that 10% is typically a wash. I mean, the money that you get paid is a wash.
It boils down to a wash. Yep.
Got it. Hey guys, Kevin Bupp here with Sunrise Capital Investors. As you are hopefully already well aware if you've been a listener for any period of time, my goal has always been to provide you with as much value as I possibly can through my two podcasts, Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow and the Mobile Home Park Investing Podcast. As our audience continues to grow, literally, we've been downloaded millions of times by folks in over 125 countries. I've had thousands of people reach out looking to get involved in our niche, and that's the phenomenal niche of mobile home park investing. Now, for those that don't know, I've been a full-time real estate investor for more than 20 years now, and I've personally invested in and have owned apartment complexes, various commercial properties, hundreds of single-family rentals, and I've interviewed some of the most successful investors in just about every other asset class, and I've arrived at this one very simple conclusion. Mobile home parks are hands down the best investment I've found to date. Why? They provide investors with the best risk-adjusted returns out of any other real estate sector that I've seen. Investing in real estate can get complicated, and I really want to simplify this process for you. If you're someone who wants to diversify away from the uncertainty of Wall Street and allocate a percentage of your real estate portfolio to mobile home parks, but maybe don't have the time nor the inclination to personally locate good deals yourself, then our team will do it for you. At Sunrise Capital Investors, our team specializes in the acquisitions and management of undervalued and highly profitable mobile home parks. And we are now providing accredited investors with an opportunity to participate directly alongside our team in Growth and Income Fund 3. When you invest in our fund, you get immediate diversification into multiple deals we acquired off-market that are already performing and have built-in sweat equity. And let me say this, I believe that we are hands down the best in our space at sourcing highly profitable off-market deals. That's really what makes us unique in this niche and as investment managers. As stewards of your capital, we truly are aligned with our investors. We've structured our investment fund so that we as a company are incentivized in the same way the investor is, which is through the performance of the investment itself. In addition, we want to make sure that we not only make money for our investors, but that they understand how it's being made. That's why we provide our accredited partners with a private monthly podcast that walks them through the detailed updates on how their investment is performing. And we're very transparent, providing you with the good, the bad, and the ugly at times. And so if you'd like to learn more about the partnership opportunities with our team here at Sunrise, please visit us at investwithsunrise.com and request access to the investor presentation. It's absolutely free, and you'll get instant access to review the off-market deals that we've already purchased that you can co-own with our team. Also, feel free to call us at 833-CASH-FLOW without the O. Again, that's 833-227-4359. And our investor relations team will help you schedule an appointment to speak with one of our managing principals. If you have questions, go ahead and schedule the call. Let's jump on the phone. And with that, guys, I'd like to leave with one last thought. From the time that I wake up in the morning till the time that I lay my head down the rest of the evening, my number one priority with everything I do, whether it be recording this podcast, working for our investors, helping each of you reach your investment goals, to providing a great experience to each of our residents who reside in our communities, is to add huge amounts of value to everyone that I come in contact with. Now, with that being said, I look forward to the opportunity of bringing value to you through Sunrise and through this podcast. Thank you for your time. Now, let's go ahead and get back to the show. What are some other important aspects of hiring a public adjuster that we need to be aware of? I mean, as a consumer having an issue, we've got some type of catastrophic event. What else do we need to know, Kyle, as we go down this path?
Well, I think it boils down to a business decision. The opportunity costs that are presented to an asset owner or any asset manager, where they have to dedicate time and personnel to handle inspections, solicit contractors, gather quotes, gather bids, communicate with the insurance company. This entire process that, many folks may just say, hey, go out there, do your things, send me a check. But that's definitely a reactive, and you're immediately paying defense at that point. Mm-hmm. Once they publish things that, look, this isn't your grandfather's insurance company anymore, you have to prove your loss. And so, really, I think it boils down to the opportunity cost in, being it's a business decision where you're hiring now a licensed professional to go out there, assess the policy, evaluate the damage, measure the loss, present that in a professional manner to the insurance company, to their adjusters and consultants, and bring these files home to where you ultimately have the funding to move forward with the repairs.
Got it. What is the process if the insurance company basically turns down the claim? I hire a public adjuster, and the insurance company basically turns down that claim that's submitted. What's that process look like thereafter?
There's a lot of different scenarios to play out there. A lot of it depends on, what kind of loss is it? Okay. So obviously, here I'm in Pensacola, we're working Hurricane Sally. We know there was a devastating event that happened here in the Panhandle. Likewise with the fire, fire is more often than not, it's the first covered cause in any insurance policy. But then you get into situations where, it's a storm loss where, like in Texas, hail is very predominant, where, hail is very subjective. If you don't have baseball, softball hail that comes in and impacts a property and it's golf ball, it's quarter size, that damage becomes more scrutinized, and whether or not, they don't just lay over at that point. Even on these hurricane claims that we deal with here, the arsenal of experts that these insurance companies hire, whether it be engineers, whether it be building consultants, forensic accountants for your loss of income, all of these players that are introduced to the process have essentially one end goal, and that's to minimize the insurance company's exposure, period.
Yeah. I'm assuming there's situations, during any natural disaster, I guess you could use hail as one where, damage might occur to your property, but it might not be considered to infringe on the structural integrity of the property, right? It's just more cosmetic than anything. And so how does situation, I'm guessing that probably plays out a lot to where...
It almost sounds like you've been through that before. So it's funny you say that. So in Texas specifically, and not only Texas, but it's catching wind. I think it mostly gained some momentum there back home, where policies now have introduced, things like a cosmetic exclusion, to where, especially if you have, if it's a warehouse type facility or, any type of metal roof covering, where, hail comes in and just dents a roof, then they say, well, it hasn't impacted its functional ability, it's only cosmetic. And so they bring in waivers and endorsements within the policy that ultimately limit how the policy responds to that type of damage. And so, the battle ultimately becomes, look, if it's a dime, if you have an event that's producing nickel dime size hail and you have a heavy gauge metal roof on a property, it's really not going to do that much damage. But whenever you get into situations where, you do get that golf ball, baseball hail, and it does create those impacts that, if you look at it, it's a dent, it looks cosmetic, but then you really have to start diving into, how was all of these metal products, they have a protective coating over the underlying steel, whether it be a galvanized coating, whether it be a Kynar baked on coating. Those can gain micro fractures from an impact that you can't just look at it and identify and see it. There's a lot of things that go into it that, an insurance company is going to take an initial approach where they may assert an exclusion, such as a cosmetic exclusion. But then, with, a company like ours, where we come in, bring in a forensic engineer, bringing in a metallurgist to go in and actually test that metal to validate whether or not it is indeed cosmetic or if it is functional. Those are the things that you really have to do to go, again, to go back to my point earlier, is you got to prove the loss.
Got it. As far as when we're out there on the hunt, you mentioned be proactive, like not wait till an actual disaster occurs, but be proactive. Maybe interview a few firms such as yourself. Find a company that you align with, what have you feel comfortable with, and that you've got kind of in your Rolodex, you could put it that way. As far as, so when that natural disaster occurs, hopefully it never does, but when it does occur, you know where you're calling, you know what the next action steps are.
Right.
What are some of the important interviewing tips? Like what kind of questions do we need to be asking, and what are some of those red flags that might pop up when we're making a few calls or outbound calls to interview different public adjustment firms such as yourself?
Well, I think it's the most important aspect of our business is really our ability to navigate through an insurance policy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Contractors are out there that understand construction, know how to put the building back and understand the scope of work. But really understanding the policy and the benefits that are recoverable and knowing what you're going to get beforehand and really structuring your insurance products to make sure that, hey, if this happens, you know how the policy is going to respond and the benefits that you're going to recover. If you don't know, like say you have a fire, and as far as the questions that you would ask with the public adjuster is really that initial due diligence period of, value add for us anytime that we meet a potential client, whether or not they have a claim now or potentially in the future, is look, let's make sure that your policy is catered in the event something does happen. What's your biggest exposure? What's your biggest risk? Is it going to be a fire at your apartment complex? Is it a water leak at your rental property? There's so many different, if you're in Texas, what kind of deductibles do you have for windstorm and hail? So having that due diligence and, really making sure the person that you're interviewing understands the response of the policy and the products that you have in place is really going to be a telltale sign as far as how they're going to be able to navigate the process once that does ultimately happen. Because like I say, the more properties that you own, the more holdings that you have, the larger your exposure. If you have an apartment complex and you've got 80 doors, well, that's 80 ranges. That's another 160 toilets. There's, so many more moving parts within that versus, if you have 2 or 3 single family rental properties. So
yeah,
everything, it's all relative to, what your exposures are, what your inherent risks are that you're really trying to insure against. I have a close friend of mine, his family trust has, 60 single family homes there in Central Texas. They've made a business decision to self-insure the first 10,000, which means that, if they have a hail claim or if they just have a roof claim, they're self-insured for it. So these are all risk transfer techniques that, as the investor and as you really have a blend of your risk management techniques and making sure that you have a comprehensive package there.
Got it. No, that all makes sense. As far as big red flags, we talked about this a little bit before we started recording here. There was, I think, 4 or 5, red flags in the insurance claims process that consumers need to look out for. What were they?
So, first of all, every state is going to have various statutory timelines as far as acknowledgement of a claim, request for information. And so those will all be very state specific. Catastrophes can extend a lot of those requirements by state. But, traditionally, if you have a fire and you report a claim to your insurance company, the insurance company has, as an example, 15 days to acknowledge and respond and begin an investigation to that claim. Other things, what we deal with from, whether it's a, catastrophe, whether it's a fire, whether you have a water event, everyone's probably seen the trucks driving around the lime green with the orange, the Surf Pros, the Service Master trucks that are driving around. Look, we all have a space in the world that we live in. But, you want to be sure and you want to be careful of, any preferred vendors that are, have pre-existing relationships, whether it be with the adjuster, whether it be with the insurance company directly, because, those, if you have that vendor relationship between, if you have an insurance company that's recommending, hey, use this group, and they have that vendor relationship with them, they also can't serve 2 masters. They can't always do what's right for the policyholder and then also do what's right in their view for the insurance company.
How would you find that out if it wasn't like a vendor that your insurance company referred to you, but yet you just went about calling on vendors on your own? How would you make a determination if there was some type of pre-existing relationship there? I mean, is it something that has to be disclosed by the vendor?
No, I wouldn't necessarily say disclosed.
Okay. So just be wary of any vendor that your insurance company recommends.
Right. And even if the vendor comes out and says, hey, if they have a lot of intel as far as your name, your insurance company, they sent me out, those are things where you want to have a little bit of guard because they wouldn't have a lot of that intel had it not been provided to them.
Got it. Okay. What were some of the other red flags, Kyle?
So one of the conditions precedent in the policy, as far as every insurance policy that's out there, there's duties in the event of a loss. So that's the insured's duties after a loss. One being prompt notice, which we touched on a little bit earlier. You have to notify the insurance company, and then in turn they have statutory requirements as far as their response. One of them is a red flag is going to be if the insurance company requests what's called an examination under oath. And so with an examination under oath is that's a condition precedent. If they request it, you are required to go to the examination. But what that is telling is that there's either a coverage dispute, there's suspicion of some type of fraudulent activity. And so if you do have, any type of examination under oath request, they're going to want to audit financial records. And so that's when they're only doing that and requesting that to try to gather data and evidence that you have that may support a defense for the insurance company.
Got it. Okay. Interesting. What to do when you get into that situation?
You don't have a choice. You have to submit to the examination.
Yeah.
You're under oath. You can't perjure yourself. You have to be, forthcoming and honest. And you shouldn't have anything to hide at the end.
Got it. Any other big red flags?
So we've got, there's definitely timelines as it relates to, once, again, we talked about it earlier as far as the initial acknowledgement, when they initiate the investigation into a claim. There's timelines state specific as far as, once they begin their investigation, as far as the timelines they have in requesting information from you. And then once they gather all the information they need to render an acceptance or a rejection of the claim, there's timelines associated with that as well. So any state licensed public adjuster, depending on where they're at in the country, again, every state's a little bit different. But a licensed public adjuster will have, they'll be able to guide you through a lot of those timelines and response periods from the insurance company.
Okay, as far as a public adjuster is concerned, are there any circumstances where a public adjuster might ask for upfront monies from a client? Okay, got it. So that should be a red flag. If that happens, that should be a red flag.
If you hire a public adjuster and they ask for any type of retainer payment, anything of that nature, that is an immediate red flag as far as our profession is concerned.
Got it. And does every state require a license, a public adjuster to be licensed?
So to act as a public adjuster, yes. So
they should have credentials that they can,
correct.
show you.
So we're licensed through the State Department of Insurance. So states like Alabama, for example, Arkansas, those states do not license public adjusters, and it's interesting as far as public adjusters. We have a very small carve out, quite frankly, of practicing law. And an insurance policy is a contract of adhesion. And as a licensed public adjuster, we have that carve out to analyze, interpret, and negotiate those benefits that are due under that contract. And so states like Alabama, Arkansas, where they do not license public adjusters, that can, anyone that would ultimately negotiate any benefits from a first party insurance policy would be considered the unauthorized practice of law.
Got it. Okay. Sounds good. As far as anything else that we might have missed here, Kyle, that's of vital importance for the listeners, as it pertains to, dealing with a loss, generally speaking, dealing with a loss, some type of catastrophic event on their investment property, anything that you can think of that, that you want to leave them with here that we could have missed on.
Yeah. So I think, the biggest hurdles that we encounter, through a claims process is really the limitations in coverage. If you own, if you have interest in, a multifamily building and it catches fire, the building was constructed, before 1960. There's a likelihood that there's asbestos in the building.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of insurance policies have absolute asbestos exclusions, which, if you have a building and if there's been work done in the past and that all asbestos has been abated at some point in the life, in just the life of the building, then you don't necessarily have that concern. But if there haven't been any major capital improvements over the past 40 years to this building, if you don't have, the cost to abate asbestos can become astronomical, as far as, especially in the event of a fire, if you have a hurricane, and the cost to properly abate it and have that material removed. If you don't have that proper coverage, you could be out tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars in the abatement process.
Yeah, very interesting. It's we actually we own mobile home parks, and up in New York we have a number of communities, and we found out the hard way that some of the mobile homes in that community were built, I think, prior to the 68 or something like that. It had a lot of asbestos in them, and it's a very expensive process to remove those homes and dispose of them than that of a normal mobile home.
Yeah. And really, as far as just some other, just coverage nuggets, you want to look out for coinsurance. That is definitely that's a clause within the policy that requires the policyholder to insure an asset to a certain value relative to its construction cost. We encounter all too often, I feel, where an investor can go in, they purchase a property for, if it's a single family, they get it on a deal, they have 150 cash into it, but it's a 3,000, 2,500 square foot home, and they only insure it for their financial investment and protecting that investment. Where if there's a coinsurance provision on the policy, they're required to, regardless of what their dollar investment is into the property, they're required to still insure the value of the building from the foundation up. And so if those two numbers don't align and you're underinsured, you could be faced with a penalty as far as the insurance, as far as the indemnity payments for the loss and damage, commensurate with where they say you should have had the insurance and where you had it. So if you're 50% insured to value, then they're going to penalize you by 50% of that payment.
Got it. Good deal. Well, Kyle, you shared a lot of great information here today, lots of golden nuggets. I'd like to ask, if you had one final golden nugget of advice or wisdom that you could leave with the listeners here today that might inspire and motivate them as they progress in their own real estate career. And it could be pertaining to, dealing with a loss, what have you. But what would that one last golden nugget be?
I would say, don't be penny wise and dollar foolish. A few dollars saved on premiums could cost you tens of thousands on the back end whenever you actually need it to come to fruition.
Yep. That's great advice. You get what you pay for.
That's right.
It's very, very true. Well, fantastic. Kyle, for those that want to learn more about you, your firm, services you guys provide, where's the best place to find you?
So you can find us on the internet. Our website is strongclaims.com. My email is kyleh@strongclaims.com. We're available anytime, anywhere. We're licensed throughout the Southeast here, venturing into, parts of the Midwest, creeping up the East Coast here. So we have licensed adjusters pretty much scattered across the United States. So wherever they're at, we'd be happy to take a phone call, and, a phone call is always free.
Got it. Sounds great. Well, Kyle, thanks for joining us here today. Very much appreciate having you here. Lots of great information, and keep rolling, my friend.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All righty, guys, that's all we have for this week's show. So until we meet again next week, this is your host, Kevin Butt, wishing you huge success. Take care.
Congratulations! Now you've got more of the best tricks of the trade in building massive amounts of passive income from real estate. For more amazing resources, visit realestateinvestingforcashflow.com. We'll see you next Monday morning.